Hey everybody, it's James, otherwise known as the Skate Punk Lefty, back with another video and with something a little different. We're doing a slideshow today. So, as you might have known, unless you're living under a rock, Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election, unfortunately. Me seeing things from a socialist perspective, I would prefer a liberal and actually pro-democracy, sometimes pro-worker candidate win the election versus a far right bigot in a ignorant word I can't say because I'm trying to gain an algorithm. So Trump wound up winning, and Kamala lost to an extent kind of badly, where she lost the electoral college in a popular vote. While I don't think that this is the voice of America because 15 million people didn't vote this time, and in fact, there was something that I forgot to add in the slideshow that I will get to right here. So, one of the main reasons why Kamala Harris lost the election was her rhetoric around the Israel Palestine conflict. There's not a slide for this, so I'm going to do it here. I forgot to write it down on my phone notes pad, and I forgot to make a slide for it. I'm not starting over. But anyways, the Israel Palestine conflict, you know what it is the Israel and Palestinians going at it over their land and resources over in that area. The Palestinians are the little guy in the situation, and if you will, are the David, and Israel is the Goliath stomping down on those poor people and their families and kids. So Kamala Harris did not differentiate herself enough from Joe Biden or previous administration enough for people who care so deeply about the Israel Palestine conflict to vote. While at the same time, I could be a little irritable with them, I can understand the sentiment of not wanting to vote for somebody that won't make changes for your people in another country that the United States directly has contact with, in control of. We're the most powerful country on earth. If a politician in our country, especially a leader of the free world, president or vice president, says they want to do something, they can make it happen. And sadly, Kamala Harris did not differentiate herself from especially Joe Biden's handling of this conflict. While behind the scenes, we know about things like them not getting along with Netanyahu and stuff like that. Publicly, from a standpoint, she constantly talks about Israel having a right to defend itself, a talking point that no left-leaning person, no, I can darn sure bet you no Arab person or a pro-Palestinian person has any inclination to entertain at after what's happened to those poor people in the Gaza Strip. But one thing I will say about this is that under Joe Biden things were bad, and at least Joe Biden wouldn't give them certain weapons and would condemn them at least tacitly when they committed certain atrocities or human rights abuses. But Trump is a full-on Zionist, and he will send Israel everything that they need and never criticize him. Trump is loved by both the Israeli government and the defense industry, and I don't see things getting better for the Palestinian people, let alone the Ukrainians, with Trump in office. With that said, let's go to our next slide. So, there's been a normalization of fascist rhetoric in society today. Like racism, racist jokes, racist conspiracy theories. Like you have a lot of people, kind of started with the 1350 thing, but once that got debunked and talked about in a more nuanced way, people just literally started saying slurs and or promoting false narratives about black people, about Hispanic, Latino immigrants, and Jewish people and others to justify their bigotry. To the point where they're so anti-intellectual, that's on this slide too, where they cannot be debated or debunked out of their positions. They would rather live in a world of regressive hatred than to accept new facts about their worldview being wrong. Because a lot of people in America, you can clearly see from the voter rolls, are just simply very hateful. This also goes for using LGBT people and women as a scapegoat. I meant to put as right there. Again, too late. So, especially women, because you see a lot of these manosphere clowns talking about how women are the reason why men work the way that they do, or everybody's working the way that they do. When really The reason why society is organized the way that it is, and why certain people work, certain people don't, why it's so hard to live nowadays, especially as a single man, and you're dealing with things like loneliness, you're dealing with things like isolation. You're dealing with things like bills, rent, and things, and it doesn't feel like it's enough money to get by, and it's a drain on your mental health. You have a lot of fools out here who will blame women or somehow pencil in LGBT people and say that they're taking all the positions of power when at the end of the day, it's the rich capitalists that are making everything hard for everybody, where that's harder to survive and live and harder to meet people or connect with things or other people that that you have love for. And that can even flow into xenophobia and fake populism, because you have a lot of xenophobic rhetoric going around, and it's also handicapped Kamala Harris because she started buying into the Republican Party's xenophobia. Most voters in that are left leaning, whether it's liberals, social democrats, socialists, the anarchists and communists that do vote, we are looking for progressive speech when it comes to talking about people crossing the border to create a better life for themselves. While I understand at the end of the day that there must be something done about the border, I think there's a healthier and smarter way to go about it. Because the Republican Party is not trying to wave people across the border in an orderly fashion. They are fascists. They are white supremacists. They have a low view of Latin and Hispanic people that come here and help drive our country forward every day. And y'all can go back to intellectualism, because what these people don't understand that are holding all these biases and bigotries is that once the Hispanic and Latino immigrants get deported, things like garbage collection, things like farming, things like construction, things like factory work, a lot of this stuff is going to slow down. And it goes with a sense irony that a large amount of Hispanic men, especially, voted for Trump because they want to try to be one of the good ones and get the bad illegal ones deported. But ironically enough, the only way that they can know is by harassing Hispanic people. So Hispanic people that voted for Trump, if the police or ICE knock on your door 4 to 6 times a night to see if you got your papers, be ready for that kind of stuff, because you have opened up a world of stop and frisk, but for Hispanic people, even though Hispanic people face stop and frisk at a high rate already. My point being on this slide is that we have normalized talking about the minority and downtrodden people of society. Look at this dude named Tyler Oliveira, where he literally, because homeless people at the end of the day are people that need help, people who are going through hard times in their life and they need sympathy and understanding. But you got tons of people, and a Kasparian, that point cameras in their face and say that they're leechy and dirty criminals and stuff like that, even the ones that haven't committed a crime, when these people are just people who need a step up and need a little bit of help to get their life back on track. And I will find that a lot of these people, if they were homeless or something like that, wouldn't want somebody talking down to them and treating them, as such. The point being in this slide again is the normalization of fascist rhetoric, where, again, speaking ill of the downtrodden and minorities in society is a very normalized thing on the internet nowadays, especially when it comes to right-wing spaces or spaces where there's right-wing people and left-wing people. Even the dreaded jokes, and I say dreaded in a laughing way, about straight white males being persecuted, these jokes have made their way into multiple communities. That's another thing to speak on later, where you can sometimes not avoid right-wing jokes and right-wing propaganda, even if the community is mostly progressive or started out as progressive. Oh, whoops. Billionaires and biased media. So, billionaires and biased media, when we talk about this, it's because they falsely market right-wing opinions as valid facts. Charlemagne the God did a good job at calling out CNN on this. He's talking directly to Anderson Cooper, where instead of talking about policy disputes between Trump and Kamala Harris, we're still focusing on Trump's racism. His racism, while bad, a lot of people are comfortable with and did not do a good job at selling people Kamala Harris. But CNN is not really necessarily a liberal network anymore. And that can go into the fact that something else is on this slide is that they literally like billionaires and literally own all platforms, and they benefit from right-wing Republican policies and far-right policies. And in a fascist society, few rich people are going to see persecution by the society to help build, especially most of these people that own media companies. I think the best example of ownership and the perversion of ironically enough with Twitter, because there's a lot of adult entertainment even if you don't follow adult entertainment creators, is Twitter. Twitter got ruined when Elon Musk took over it, but it's just not Twitter. It's also Facebook and right here on YouTube, where right-wing opinions and biases are marketed and made easier to catch the algorithm. That's why you will notice these days as you scroll on the internet, there's tons of black conservatives and Republicans, black Christian nationalists, but all the black content creators that speak, truly in for their people and for other minorities and workers' rights. Our channels are very small. And that also has a lot to do with the fact that right-wing billionaires will pump money into these channels to get them views and get them a boost. So think of it as a little pat on the head for being a little good boy. And when I say all of them, that includes Facebook and Meta. While in Instagram and what was the name of the other app? I forget the name of it. Oh, Threads. These also have a right wing bias. That's why when you go on Facebook, or especially because it's a whole it's a whole joke about arguing with your right wing mom or right wing dad, and they're citing things that they saw on Facebook, because again, right wing political activity is amplified on Facebook and it's easier to catch your algorithm. There's reasons for that, which I don't want to spoil for later, but just know that these billionaires and rich people benefit from racism, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia being normalized. Right-wing infiltration of all culture. And I'm going to speak on this myself as a skateboarder, as a punk rocker, as a Transformers lover, as an anime lover, as, somebody who loves action cartoons and action movies, and, and generally just like, other rock music and techno and pop and old school rap in general. So, right-wingers, and I should have put a picture of Tom McDonald up here, because he's the best example of this, have created a cavalcade of ignorant, how do I say the word, just terrible people that infiltrate different subcultures and slowly seep and stick in right-wing propaganda. Another good example of this is Tim Pool, a right-wing skateboarder. What? Since when can you be a right-wing skateboarder? That makes no sense, because skateboarding culture stems from punk culture, which was also very progressive. But you got a lot of punk rockers, quote unquote, now, who say that punk was about just simply being offensive, when punk rock was a leftist, militant, anarchist movement. It has to go, really bad for all the black people and even whites and Hispanic people that know that rap music, hip hop, and R&B started as a music for black people, especially to express our experiences and talk about the problems that we're dealing with in our neighborhood. A way to, if you will, like NWA would say, express ourselves. But every culture, and I forgot to throw gaming in here too, with people like Asmongold, like the video I previously covered. No matter where you go in society, even if it's in cultures that are definitively progressive and left-leaning, you will find some of these jerks clogging up the algorithm with some of their political opinions. Like there was the scene from, this is a nerdy example right here, but this nerdy example is what I'm talking about. And if I find a meme, I might post it in a separate video. But there was a clip in the Bumblebee movie of Optimus Prime taking down several Decepticon seekers because he was left on Cybertron by himself. And this is a cool scene. But instead of seeing this for what it is, a cool scene, and not ignoring the fact that Optimus Prime, if you really look at his characterization throughout the cartoons and comic books, would be viewed as a left-leaning person, or being, I guess you can say, a revolutionary in his own right. If you read the IDW comics and you read and watch the Align continuity, The point being is that you have these people talking about something when you're a straight white male in 2023. Put that above the video. While not important really to the scene and to the decharacterization of Optimus Prime, but this is primely, if you will, what I'm speaking of, where they took because Transformers has a fan base, right? Of all different kinds of people. So they co-opted our fan base to promote their right-wing biases and propaganda. This happens all over different cultures and stuff like that, and it's a darn shame. It's even happened to, of course, Christianity. I'm a Jesus lover. I believe in the Trinity. I believe Jesus died on the cross and he's the savior of us all, and I believe we're all God's children. But I think that's the most infamous example of right-wing co-option of a culture, but that that's less modern times, and that's something that slowly happened over time in previous decades that I have to do research about. But I think the moral majority movement kind of fits for the contemporary co-option of Christianity to promote right-wing biases. Point being is that I felt like the past year or two, especially this past year, no matter what subculture you partook in, you could not avoid right-wing propaganda. Toothless populism and a co-option of left-wing language. Okay, here we go. For instance, falsely anti-war, especially when fighting fascist governments, going as far, Michael Tracy and Tim Pool, Bryson Grayson, Jesse Lee Peterson, James Hake, to criticize America's involvement in World War II. See, arguments like this are not made by people who are principally anti-war, and they would try to falsely equivocate wars like the Vietnam War and World War II. These are two completely different type of wars, two completely different time periods, two completely different Americas being fought for two completely different reasons. But they think being anti-war, while a good thing, you can't be nuanced about it. And they make you feel like the bad guy when you tell them that sometimes war is a useful and necessary tool to make the world a better place. At least that's my opinion. I say that as a leftist. If we are to move to a society where, the workers do own the means of production and stuff like that, I don't think it's going to happen without, some bloodshed. I hate to say that, but the world can't get better when you got creeps hanging off your coattails. And this is not me making threats. This is me being honest about how the world works. Again, I'm just describing how war can be a tool to make the world a better place. So anyway, we can also move on to claiming to be pro-worker, but they stunt the progress of workers' rights. I meant to put rights on that. I made this really quickly. So these are the same people that claim, like, I love working class Americans love Trump. But then when you actually ask them about their policy positions when pertaining to, a lot of the problems that workers are dealing with, not getting paid enough, biasness and interruptions in people forming unions, people getting subsidized by the government when it comes to social safety nets such as food stamps, Social Security, and what have you, they are nowhere to be found. These are the same people that don't even want people to have free health care, and they don't even want your kid to get free lunch, so you got to pay for that too. So these are people that claim to be pro-worker 24/7 and speak of the working class more so than the Democrats do, especially post-DNC this year, but they have no drive to actually help workers and expand workers' rights. And this also comes with constantly shifting blame of socioeconomic problems on others. Like the example I gave earlier with the normalization of fascist rhetoric, where instead of talking about billionaires and rich people paying people less for their labor, how wages have stagnated but productivity has gone up, they blame immigrants for your wages being low. When a lot of these people, ironically enough, can be in firms that are so small or so big that immigrants don't work there, or the billionaire makes enough to pay people enough but they just decide not to, and they never will because the heat's not and illness is not on them to treat their workers better. You're focused on fighting a fake war against people that are working just like you. It also goes to being falsely anti-establishment, because you hear this from a lot of people like Russell Brand, Tim Pool, Charlie Kirk even these days, and he's a suit and tie duckhead at this point in his life. He's not an anti-establishment. He's the most conservative, racist white guy, racist white teenage college bro that you can think of, but he claims to be anti-establishment, ironically enough. So does that lispy weirdo Nick Fuentes. Point being is that you could be anti-establishment, but it does not have to always be good. See, the left is anti-establishment because we are anti-capitalist, we are anti-racist, we are anti-homophobia, we are anti-sexist. We want to move to a society where people are truly treated as equals, and not a society that stagnates under liberal austerity politics or fascism. You can be an anti-establishment person and be a bad person. And I would like to cite people like Tim Pool when they say this, because technically neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and white nationalists are anti-establishment. You can be anti-establishment all day, but it's always about the society that you're trying to establish. And I put this one on here again because the toothless populism comes with infiltrating parts of society to promote this fake populism, where the gaming I will use this time, where you got people like Asmongold or what's that synthetic man who complained and whined every time a black person or a woman or LGBT person, or even people like Hill versus Babyface. This dude was literally on his computer screaming about pronouns. You use pronouns in everyday speech. Tell him to come here. Ask her to hand me that wrench. Tell him to put that box down. Stuff like that. You use pronouns in everyday language, but we come to a point where simply saying, she, her, he, him, or whatever has been turned into a battle upon itself. But in this weird battle, as I've, used as an example, the Hill versus Babyface thing, I think is the best example where this is infiltrating alternative culture and alternative media, to where, again, you can't turn your head without somebody falsely claiming to be anti-status quo and anti-establishment, loading their videos and loading your timeline with a bunch of horse dog. Another reason why Kamala Harris lost is the fault of the Democrat Party in their refusal to move left on policy and rhetoric. You see, only leftism can defeat. I said that weird. Only leftism can defeat fascism and white supremacy. Liberalism cannot stand against fascism because liberals seek to, at times, reinforce things that are hurting the working class. So, like capitalism itself. So there's no way, because Trump, the thing about right-wing populism, you can criticize anything. And the reason why Trump seems so much more human and blunt, and why he's allowed to do the things that he's doing, is because nothing Trump says or does actually means anything. It doesn't actually challenge the status quo. It doesn't beg for change in society. There's nothing transcending society about transphobia, xenophobia, racism. These things reinforce the biases that already exist in society and does not seek to challenge the status quo. And that reason right there is why right-wingers can catch the algorithm on social media a lot easier. These capitalist companies would prefer at least liberals, but at best conservative political commentators, because they don't want people that are arguing against their bottom line. I have to talk about, probably should have got some water for this, anti-intellectualism. Okay. Anti-intellectualism is very prevalent in the conservative movement today, where a lot of people are very, very ignorant and tone deaf when debating about issues. I remember a couple of debaters and YouTubers I watched talked about the devaluing of debate. I'm talking about Vosh and Dylan Burns, where they kind of butted head on that. But I don't know, after some debates that I do on TikTok, some of which I wish I could post here sometimes, I'm kind of siding with Vosh on it. I got into an argument yesterday, for example, right? argument as in like, a debate about Trump cutting Social Security and Medicare, right? So you have these people who are insane, that are completely anti-intellectual, hateful, and detached from reality, grinning ear to ear as they back up the goalposts for everything that you say. Because I told them something that's irrefutable. That since Ronald Reagan's administration, Republicans have been trying to cut Social Security. This is not up for debate. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows. Republicans are lying about it now, but a lot of older white people, ironically under Joe Biden, when it was Joe Biden against Trump, voted for Joe Biden because they didn't want to lose their Social Security and their Medicare. Ironically enough, they were able to see their class interests with other people that look different than them or that are in the same bracket as them. My point being is that there's like, so do you? Because this is what they do. When you're debating them, they're not like actually Googling things or trying to intellectually go back and forth with you about the different things that you tell them or the citations that you use. These people grin ear to ear while they feign ignorance, and they move the goalposts of the conversation so far that instead of talking about Republicans cutting Social Security and Social Security disability, you're now talking about, is Forbes a legit source? And they get on there like, so do you got a citation for Trump saying that? Yes, there's this Forbes article, one of the most reputable news websites on the internet. I don't know if they have a magazine or newspaper. I know they got a website, and they are held in very high regard when it comes to citations. I'm sure people in college use Forbes to cite their papers and stuff like that. So how do you know that Forbes, because this is what they do, they're smiling ear to ear when they're saying it. How do you know that Forbes is a legit website? And I'm like, really? Do I need to go get you the green open court reading book for you to understand basic citations and and emotional control about and understanding citations? So nothing can ever be real. Everything is a conspiracy because of the way that they think like that. Like other things that I debate with conservatives, like the Southern Strategy. There's irrefutable proof that the Southern Strategy happened. There is a cynical historian and Crash Course U.S. History, two apolitical channels that have videos about the Southern Strategy. But you get into these debates with these clowns, especially the black conservatives, and they try to deny basic U.S. history that you learn from 7th to 10th grade. There's no disputing the Southern Strategy, but everything to them is a conspiracy theory. Everything to them has a way to be roped into being dishonest. So there's no way to debate with people that right here deny basic facts, who are super dishonest and will constantly virtue signal their fake populism about how anti-establishment they are because they don't believe Wikipedia or Forbes or The Verge or History Channel or the Discovery Channel or the FBI. It's insane debating with conservatives because we have come to a point where, again, everything is a conspiracy. And, and because, like, most of the debates I do is for the audience, because I feel like that's one thing that changed me from a black pill incel / sort of liberal into a full-on socialist, is not only hearing different ideas, but learning how they're wrong. But they knew that them honestly debating us was leading to a pretty much right-wing to left-wing pipeline. There is so many people with stories about how one day they were very far right, and then later, after they heard a debate by Varsh, Zanderhar, on Demon Mama, or someone else, Econo Boy, or whatever, they wind up turning to be left-wing people. Hunter Avalon, that's another good debater. He still does it. Even though people are so stupid and anti-intellectual, they have nullified the very basis of being factual. So the only thing you can really do is insult these people And that's another liberal weakness about why Kamala Harris lost too, is she partook in conservative policy. What did I say? With civility politics, instead of calling out these people for what they are, fascist thugs. And last but not least, and of course there's nothing that needs to be up here, the reason why Kamala Harris lost this election is because of hate. And ironically enough, this time, it's not even just white people. Black women are the most mistreated minority on the planet, possibly. Next to Palestinian women, possibly. I think are the only women on earth that have it harder. No matter how smart, no matter how intellectual, no matter how good, and it grieves me as a father with a daughter now, and as a black man, I deal with my own grievances in society with the way that I'm viewed, despite whatever I do. No matter what a black woman does, she's thought of a certain hateful way. And a lot of people just are not ready or just refuse to accept another black president, and darn sure refuse to accept a woman president. A huge part of the conservative campaign, even before Kamala Harris became the presidential nominee, a huge part of it was misogyny. And misogyny is one of those bigotries that is aracial, that slowly coaxes you into other far-right beliefs. Because a lot of black people that are conservatives now probably started with misogyny, especially a lot of black nerds, because, they have a hard time in high school, and at least they're having a stunted worldview about how society really works and the things that we really experience, which leads to them accepting white supremacist arguments not only against black women, but about black men also. They think they're one of the good ones, one of the superior people, because they partake in a different subculture, which leads to anti-LGBT stuff, which leads to the anti-worker advocacy. So hatred won this election, if you ask me, in my opinion. To sum this up, hatred, anti-intellectualism are the two motivating factors to why Kamala Harris lost this election, and my suggestions for how things can change. I was going to do this in a separate video, but I might as well just do it here. We can talk. We can talk. For instance, we can talk. Whoops, did that by accident. We can talk. You see, let me make sure I'm still recording. Oof, I made a big mistake right there. But anyways, went dark for a second, I know. I'm going to try to even blow myself up as I talk about this a little bit. Like I said, I don't have two monitors, so y'all going to have to deal with me in OBS, actually working on OBS as I blow myself up to talk about this. So, my best advice to the Democrat Party is to, if they don't want to embrace socialist rhetoric, they have to at least embrace social democracy. They have to care about the plight of the average worker, not to the point of liberal abstemiousness and making sure that people can barely keep their head above water, but actually concretely solving problems that people complain about. Two, in this era of civility politics, and I thought that was over, starting with Michelle Obama saying that when they go low, we go low too, or whatever the hell she said. Excuse my language. You cannot honestly debate and intellectualize people who are anti-intellectual and hateful. Though they did it in her campaign for the most part, they have to air these people out, these right-wing politicians and commentators, and show the world how weak, effeminate, and crazy a lot of these people really are, from Tucker Carlson all the way to Nick Fuentes. These are not people to be respected and feared. These people are crazy nutcases who need to be put in their place. And that goes for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Robert F. Kennedy too. These are not people to be afraid of. These people are to be jeered and talked down to. So the Democrat Party should change their rhetoric when it comes to approaching debates and arguing with these people, and embrace at least some left-wing styling of selling their rhetoric. I noticed they did it a little bit at the beginning and a little bit during the DNC, but after the DNC, they move right on a lot of issues, and they move right with their rhetoric. While still the better candidate, people are actually looking for something different. People don't want Joe Biden 2.0. They want Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. So we move on from that. We move on from that to speak about the next 4 years, which, to be honest with you, has to be a separate video itself about Project 2025, how the policies can affect your life and survive in the next 4 years. But this is a very tired skate punk lefty. You have a good rest of your day.